from the Manor Inn, it's Poulos and Morelli on Southington TV.
These questions were submitted by people in Southington in the latest Southington magazine. We have two moderators tonight. Taylor Deegan, General Manager of Worldwide Wine, also sits on a number of boards in town. And we have Britt Lynch. She is the Executive Director of the United Way. And they will be asking the questions. They are completely neutral.
Hi everybody, I'm Jim Morelli. I'm a local resident. I'm a third-term town councilor here in Southington. I was born and raised in Southington. I'm happy to say that I'm recently retired, so I know that I have a lot of time to put toward this position. And I'm looking to defend the Republican values and thoughts for the town of Southington.
Good. Chris.
Good evening, and thank you for hosting this debate tonight. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I thought I'd start off with sharing a little bit about who I am. I'm a lifelong resident of Southington. I was born and raised here. I'm married. I have two children in Southington Public Schools, and we live in Plantsville. We own a house, we pay property tax, and we have all the expenses of a young family. And we understand the challenges of saving for college and affordability. My parents are also residents of this town. They're 80 years old. I spent a lot of time with them and their friends, and I understand the challenges of affordability for our senior population. And my time in the legislature, my campaign centers on affordability and common sense. I'll drill down a little bit on the common sense piece. One thing that I hear loud and clear from residents, and what I am a tireless supporter of, is public safety. In my whole time as an elected official, I've always supported the police. I was proud this week to learn I received the endorsement from the State of Connecticut Police Union. I was proud to receive the endorsement of the Police Officers Association of Connecticut, of which Southington is a member. I'm proud to receive the endorsement of the International Association of Paramedics and EMTs as well. Public safety has been a cornerstone of who I am as a politician. I take a common sense approach to it. If you break the law, you should have some sort of a consequence. It should be an appropriate consequence. I'm also a very strong believer in fiscal conservatism, in particular the fiscal guardrails. What they do in our budget is that they cap spending, they force us to pay down debt, and they force us to save for a rainy day. Very much like we would run our home budget for our families. I think that we need to take a hard look at state mandates. We need to identify the unnecessary ones and get rid of them. And I was proud to vote for the Education Mandate Relief Act. Basically what that means is stakeholders will get together, do an audit of the mandates, decide which ones don't have a good return on investment, and get rid of them. I think we should replicate that process across all sectors. I think the state would save a lot of money if we did that. I think it'd help us with our spending. Since I got elected, I have pushed back on the energy companies and the cost of electricity. My voting record shows that, and I look forward to that conversation tonight. I'm sure that will come up. And lastly, I am running a campaign on my record. I am not running a campaign on rhetoric, but I'm running a campaign on my voting record, my record of moderacy, my record of collaboration, and my record of doing what's best for this town and what's right for our town and our state. Thank you.
Question one for Mr. Morelli. What can you do for Southington that separates you from your opponent?
Well, most people that know me know that I'm convicted in my thoughts, and I think that we need to do much more to unleash the police, to work on the utility costs that we have here. I think that with Democrats in control, there's a lot of lip service but no actual real service. And so I will dedicate my time to making sure that paramedics make more money, that caregivers make more money, and that we don't use the guardrails to affect our seniors, and also not-for-profits to take care of many of our institutionalized people in the state.
Mr. Poulos, same thing. What can you do for Southington that separates you from your opponent?
I'm an independent thinker. I vote issue by issue on issues that matter most to Southington. So when there was the electricity crisis of this summer, I immediately, not only did I start to caucus with the moderate Democrats, we put forward a proposal, we put it out in the paper, and then we got on the phone with Eversource and Pure, which was very discouraging because Eversource and Pure blamed each other. I'm not about blaming people, I'm about solutions. And so a solution is going to be legislation. I crossed party lines, I signed the Republican petition to go into special session. Whether that happens or not, we are working on a bill that we're going to introduce either in that special session or in January. I have stood next to Republican members of the legislature at press conferences in support of our law enforcement. One of 2 Democrats to stand at a press conference against the elimination of secondary stops for our police officers. I am an unashamed, moderate, independent thinker. Thank you.
Next question is for Mr. Poulos. What priorities will you work on to help seniors with a high cost of living?
Sure. I have come in a lot of contact with seniors over my 2 years in the legislature and during my time on the town council. And I visited a lot of seniors at their homes. And affordability is one of the biggest concerns I have for our seniors. Many of them want to stay here in Connecticut. They want to be around their grandkids. I was proud to vote for a bipartisan budget. 80% of 139 people in the House voted for that budget, 12 voted against it, that expanded tax exemptions for seniors' retirement income. I was proud to advocate for funding to make sure we could build capital improvements and a fitness program at our senior center. Seniors that don't have to pay gym memberships save money, and so that will positively affect them and their budgets. I will, looking into next session, housing is a big issue. And one of the ideas I have for housing is to say to seniors, if you want to stay here and you can't afford it, you can go to the assessor, and this would be optional for the town to adopt these policies, and you can deem your house affordable. Again, the town would decide they want to offer this program. Once 10% of our seniors deem their house affordable, they get a tax abatement. Their house is on the affordability deed for 40 years. They get to stay. Maybe they pass away in 10 years. Then you have 30 years left of that affordability for a young millennial family to come in and buy that house and be able to access housing. That would enable seniors to stay in our town and not have to worry about the burdens of high property taxes. So that's just an idea I have. It would take a lot of collaboration and a lot of conversation with my colleagues in Hartford, but that's a way we could help our seniors who choose to go into that program.
It's time.
Thank you.
Mr. Morelli, you have 1 minute to respond. Would you like to hear the question again?
Sure.
What priorities will you work on to help seniors with a high cost of living?
Well, I think there's 2 priorities that impact seniors the most, and one of those obviously is taxes, and the second one is the cost of their utilities and living. So I do believe that there needs to be some kind of a legislation that will allow them to have a fixed cost for taxes. In other words, when they have a fixed income, they should have a fixed tax. How we work that out, I don't exactly know, but I think that that's really something that needs to be taken care of. And secondly, on the electric front, I think that Mr. Poulos is not correct. I don't believe that he did sign the bill along with the Republicans, and I want to caution everybody that a Democrat is a Democrat. No matter how you say you're moderate, you don't vote with the Republicans, and your record proves that.
Okay. Our next question goes to Mr. Morelli first. How will you support local businesses and entrepreneurs in your constituency?
Well, one of the things the state has done is increase taxes to businesses consistently, and I think that that needs to stop. I think that we need to support our businesses. Large businesses are fleeing the state at a record level, and they're not getting the support they need. So I do think, again, there needs to be reform on taxation for corporations.
Could you please repeat the question?
Sure. How will you support local businesses and entrepreneurs in your constituency?
Sure. I have been to tens of Chamber of Commerce events to learn about the needs of our business owners in this town. And I've actually gone to Hartford and influenced legislation to help certain businesses in our town as a result of my interactions with our local business owners. I'm a member of the Commerce Committee. I will support legislation that will attract businesses into our town and attract a workforce into our town. One of the ways I'd like to do that is to increase the manufacturing pipeline from high school robotics students to the manufacturing sector. And I proudly supported legislation that allowed for grants to promote robotics in our state. I'll just say that Mr. Morelli can check with the Secretary of State about the petition that I signed. I sent her a letter requesting a special session. It's the Freedom of Information Act. I would allow him to find that letter. She has to show it to him, and he will see that I did sign that petition for the special session. Thank you.
Question 4 for Mr. Poulos. How will you ensure state funding to support Southington's education budget and guarantee our students the programming and class size they need to succeed?
Sure. So when I voted for the state budget in 2023, by the way, 80% of the Republicans in the legislature voted for that budget. It was bipartisan. It was something I went to Hartford for, to vote in a bipartisan manner. We approved $150 million of education funding to our public schools in Connecticut. That's the highest amount of education funding ever to be approved in our state. I'm a proud member of the Education Committee, and I co-sponsored that legislation when it came out of committee. Of that money, about between $700,000 and $750,000 came to Southington. So while I was thinking, how can we bring more money to Southington to support our schools? I'm not sure what happened on the town council budgeting process when we've raised taxes nearly 8% over 2 years, despite that $750,000. I don't understand what happened in that process, but I did my part to support that money coming in. I also did my part when we rechanged the Seymour's pension to save our town of almost $2 million of pension obligations that we would have to pay in our budgeting. And so I'm just concerned about that extra revenue that was available, why we'd have to have more challenges and budget cuts in our education budget in Southington.
Mr. Morelli, the same question for you. How will you ensure state funding to support Southington's education budget and guarantee our students the programming and class size they need to succeed?
Well, first off, I won't vote for unfunded mandates. So Mr. Poulos wants to know what happened in the budget session for the schools. Our local school system in the last budget round asked for over $8 million of an increase on their budget at a time when nobody has money. We also had a couple of state mandates in there that we were supposed to get funding for, and we didn't. So when you talk about how we manage a budget and raise taxes, those things are what cause the taxes to go up. Unscheduled, unplanned expenses. Sorry, I lost my thought. It'll come back to me after.
Another question one more time?
That's time.
Start with you with question 5, Mr. Morelli. Governor Lamont commissioned the Blue Ribbon Panel on childcare, which was charged with developing a 5-year strategic plan for a childcare system that works for families, providers, and Connecticut's economy. The report was released in December 2023 and addresses stabilization, systems, building, and enhancements. The panel's recommendations, which some argue don't go far enough, have a total incremental investment recommendation of $148 million in year 1, increasing to $603 million by the 5th year. What are your thoughts about this plan and how it will be funded?
I'm actually not familiar with that plan, so I'd have to take a pass on that. But I would say that I would talk to my constituents about what we thought the best course of action would be.
Mr. Poulos, same question. Governor Lamont commissioned the Blue Ribbon Panel on Childcare, which was charged with developing a 5-year strategic plan for a childcare system that works for families, providers, and Connecticut's economy. The report was released in December 2023 and addresses stabilization systems, building, and enhancements. The panel's recommendation, which some argue don't go far enough, have a total incremental investment recommendation of $148 million in year 1, increasing to $603 million by the 5th year. What are your thoughts about this plan and how it will be funded?
Well, I'll say this, okay? In my time as a state representative, I have made it a point to visit a number of child care facilities in our district, in my district. I've met with the Early Childhood Collaborative leaders to learn about how we can support the early childhood needs in our district. I was proud to vote for a child care law that we have a shortage of child care instructors, of people. I voted for a law that provides an incentive, an $1,800 benefit incentive for these child care employees. And I'm a teacher. I believe that an investment in child care is going to pay dividends when we have our kids in elementary school and beyond. And kids that are ready when they get to kindergarten, first, second grade, are going to be reading at grade level, and it's going to have dividends of returns in terms of what we have to spend when we get later on in life. The plan is complicated and it's costly.
Mr. Poulos, what policies will you promote to ensure that the community is safe, livable, and vibrant for families, given the constraints of the Police Accountability Act?
Sure. First of all, I just want to make it clear that I did not vote for the Police Accountability Act. In fact, when I was in the town council, I signed a resolution with the other members of the town council in opposition of that Police Accountability Act, because I didn't think that they had enough officers at the table to weigh in on what that should have been in that Police Accountability Act. I am a tireless supporter of public safety. As a Democrat, I have the strongest record on public safety and criminal justice in at least 25 years for the Democrats that have sat in my seat. I will work with the Connecticut State Trooper Police Union. I will work with POAC, the Police Officers Association of Connecticut, and I will work to advance their legislative priorities. I have their endorsements because in the legislature, I have stood tall and strong with the police officers and law enforcement of our state, and I will continue to do that. Thank you.
Mr. Morelli, same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
Sure.
What policies will you promote to ensure that the community is safe, livable, and vibrant for families, given the constraints of the Police Accountability Act?
I think that act needs to be overturned immediately. If you ask any police officer in the state of Connecticut, not just Southington, they'll tell you that they can't do their job. And when police can't do their job, we all suffer. Regardless of whether you support that or not, the sad reality is that juvenile crime is rampant. Police won't stop a car anymore because they're worried about chase and they're worried about their own liability. And I think that we must change that legislation, period. We need to get tough on crime, we need to let police do their work, and we need to get back to where we were.
Thank you. Mr. Morelli, the Connecticut legislature has in place several fiscal guardrails, including a spending cap, an annual limit on bond issuances, a revenue cap, and a volatility adjustment. These have helped Connecticut to generate a string of surpluses to pay down nearly $7.7 billion in pension debt and amass a $4.1 billion rainy day fund. But as Connecticut's pension assets and fiscal reserves grow, funding for health care, social services, and higher education programs have been level or cut, impacting nonprofit employees and the clients they serve. How will you address the state's health, economic, and educational needs, given the current fiscal guardrails now that the ARPA funding is gone?
Well, first off, this is a great question for me because I know firsthand how that affects people. I'm the president of the board of the ARC in Southington, and I recently attended a meeting in Middletown where we heard that almost all the not-for-profits are suffering due to these guardrails. And the suffrage is that they get reimbursed not even 7% of the money that they need, and they're going to get cut to 4%. So again, these cuts don't even allow them to keep up with the cost of living. A second thing this also does is it doesn't allow for fair wages for these people because they can only pay what they can reimburse. And the state actually pays their workers for a comparable job $5 or $6 an hour more. So what that does is it causes the not-for-profits to have to go out and fight for employees and to retain those employees. And these are the people that take care of your elderly citizens, people with disabilities, and it's very hard to get these people in the first place. So those guardrails are not a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
Same question for you, Mr. Poulos. Would you like it to be repeated?
Sure.
The Connecticut legislature has in place several fiscal guardrails, including a spending cap, an annual limit on bond issuances, a revenue cap, and a volatility adjustment. These have helped Connecticut to generate a string of surpluses to pay down nearly $7.7 billion in pension debt and amass a $4.1 billion rainy day fund. But as Connecticut's pension assets and fiscal reserves grow, funding for healthcare, social services, and higher education programs has been level or cut, impacting nonprofit employees and the clients they serve. How will you address the state's health, economic, and educational needs given the current fiscal guardrails now that the ARPA funding is gone?
In 2023, the governor proposed 1% increase in funding for nonprofits. I fought and pushed back and asked, and we actually funded 3%. It wasn't enough. We're within the fiscal guardrails. I then went and worked to get a grant for the ARC of Southington for $20,000 to help them with some of their housing costs. I'm committed to working with non-for-profits from a grassroots perspective to get them grant money that can help them outside of the budgetary constraints we have at the state level. This past session, we allocated $50 million to nonprofits because they came back to us and said we need more. And so I will continue tirelessly to advocate for nonprofits within the fiscal guardrails. The fact is, we spent recklessly for 20 years in this state, and the only way out of that is going to be some fiscal discipline. We need the fiscal guardrails. We need to cap spending. We need to pay down the debt we've accumulated under different Republican and Democratic governors, and we need to save for a rainy day because we're out of the ARPA money, and things are going to get volatile, and we need to have money so that we're not having to do a tax hike when things get volatile. So.
Next question for Mr. Poulos. How do you propose to tackle the issue of affordable housing?
That's a tough issue, thank you. And I think that we need to get somewhere in the middle. We need to get somewhere in the middle. I have met with tenants associations, landlord associations, and I've met with tenants associations. And the conversations I've had are two extreme opinions on both sides for how to handle housing. We need to broker a deal. I'm not on the housing committee, but I would be very open to learning about a deal where we can have incentives for landlords and developers to provide housing that's affordable for our residents to live in that need it. Now, I mentioned earlier in my comments tonight that an out-of-the-box idea that I have is to try to offer to help seniors is to make it so that they can turn their property into affordable housing for a tax abatement, so to help them stay here. That would help them stay, and then when they moved on, their house would still be affordable, and young people would be able to access that housing at an affordable rate. It would also create integrated affordability. It wouldn't create a high density affordability, which some people get nervous about. And so that's an idea that I'd be willing to talk with people on both sides of the aisle. And again, I would never mandate that. I would make it available to municipalities to choose as a zoning regulation for their towns.
Mr. Morelli, the same question for you. How do you propose to tackle the issue of affordable housing?
That's a very interesting and complex topic. And so my feeling is this. We're in a building boom right now in Connecticut. building boom. Apartments in New Britain are going for $2,400 for a 2-bedroom apartment. The builders use the math to make their building construction work. The only way you're going to have affordable housing is to work with the builders and developers and negotiate some way that they can still make money and offer lower rents. But right now, there's no incentive for them to do that. And as far as zoning goes, most people in here know that 830G doesn't really get you affordable housing. So regardless of the rules that we have in zoning, we get four affordable apartments that are not really affordable, and all the rest are still at full rate. So there's no easy answer to that, but the answer is that until you make it an incentive for the builders to provide that housing, you're not going to see it on any grand level.
Mr. Rowan, for you. Do you think it is correct that Connecticut citizens are saddled with paying Eversource for those who did not pay their bills, and also paying Eversource so they can put in charging stations? Why are we paying for their charging stations that they will then make revenue off of? What can you do to stop this gouging of Connecticut citizens?
Well, again, I don't agree that it should happen. I feel like we should be immediately turning that back to Eversource. They shouldn't be allowed to charge the people for other people's woes. I think we need a complete revamp of PURA. I think that the Democrats put that in place to allow Eversource to make these increases, and it hasn't just been the last couple of years. They constantly come for increase after increase after increase on the backs of our local taxpayers. Thank you.
Mr. Poulos, same question for you. Do you think it is correct that Connecticut citizens are saddled with paying Eversource for those who did not pay their bills, and also paying Eversource so they can put in charging stations? Why are we paying for their charging stations that they will then make revenue off of? What can you do to stop this gouging of Connecticut citizens?
Let me be clear. No one should have to pay someone else's electric bill. Those laws were put in place before I was in the legislature. And if I were there, I would have scrutinized those laws, and I would have made sure that they didn't have a negative impact on ratepayers. Just like I did when I voted against the Green Monster, which would have raised rates and reduced reliability. Just like I did when I voted for Senate Bill 7, which said that Eversource couldn't charge us, the ratepayers, for their jet fuel, for their travel, for their lodging, for their executives, for their marketing, and for their lobbyists. I will stand strong against Eversource. What can be done? Well, the moderates put out a 6-point plan that would offer some immediate relief and a long-term plan. The fact of the matter is our system's broken, and we need to work to fix it. I am ready to sit with anyone to collaborate across the aisle to come up with legislation that will correct our broken system of electricity and billing of our ratepayers.
Mr. Poulos, how would you work with the state police to help them keep our highways safe?
Thank you for that question. I've been to a lot of houses over the last couple of years, and one of the houses I went to last summer was on Butternut Lane area. And I spoke with a resident who had a lot of concerns about our traffic and our highways. And he proposed to me a traffic safety corridor proposal. And this is something that I am going to move forward with when I get into the next session. Basically what it would do is it would create a traffic safety corridor between Waterbury and New Britain that runs straight through Southington, all of our exits. And I would work in partnership with the state police, the state police union, who has endorsed me, and the Police Officers Association of Connecticut to find out what was viable, what can we do from a policing standpoint on these highways, what do they recommend. I'd also work with the Department of Transportation, and I'd work to heighten awareness on our, and heighten the vigilance that we have on our highways. I drive 75 miles a day up and down Route 84. I was driving today at 72 miles an hour cruise control, and people are flying by me on their right, and they're flipping me off because I'm going too slow. That's a problem. People swerve in front of me. That's a problem. People are scared, and we need to create awareness, and we need to give police officers the ability to safely patrol our roads and highways. I look forward to introducing the I-84 Traffic Safety Corridor Initiative in the next legislative session to get to this, to get us some answers on this. And this is coming from me as an introducer, but it came straight from a resident who I visited at his home, who offered a lot of the data and research behind the effectiveness of this type of a proposal.
Mr. Morelli, same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
My thoughts are that until you allow the police to do their job, they're not going to stop anybody from speeding. So there's no incentive for the police to enforce the traffic laws when their lives are on the line, when they pull people over and they get released right away. And so again, until we can get tough on crime and punish some of these people so they don't do it again and allow the police to do their job, traffic will remain the way it is.
Thank you. Next question for Mr. Morelli. This election day, Connecticut voters will see this referendum question. Shall the Constitution of the state be amended to permit the General Assembly to allow each voter to vote by absentee ballot? What do you think about this issue?
I think it's ridiculous completely. I think that what they're doing is they're trying to destroy the system that we have. There's no reason why people can't vote on the first day and have to have applications to send in votes. So I'm totally against it.
Thank you. Mr. Poulos, same question. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
This election day, Connecticut voters will see this referendum question. Shall the Constitution of the state be amended to permit the General Assembly to allow each voter to vote by absentee ballot? What do you think about this issue?
Well, first and foremost, I think that when we put a question out to the people of Connecticut, we should see what they have to say. I believe in referenda because we hear directly from the people. I think that we have to be careful with any kind of voter, changes to our voting system. With absentee ballots, I'm a fan of IDs. I'm a fan of IDs, making sure the right person has the right ballot. But what we have to think of, and I visited nursing homes in Southington, that there are people that don't drive, that don't have IDs, that are confined in nursing homes. And so we have to make sure that we don't take away voting rights for people who use this in a nursing home. I'm not sure how it works with our armed forces overseas, but if they have to go to a town hall to apply for an absentee ballot, they may be deployed. And so I would just like to make sure there's ways that everyone who wants one of these gets one, and it's safe and secure. And again, this will be worked out. If the people of Connecticut vote for this, it will be our job in the legislature to make sure we have tough conversations, negotiations, so we get it right.
Mr. Poulos, this next question is for you. I believe the majority of Southington's residents are very concerned about the overdevelopment in our town and the destruction of habitat for wildlife. The small town feel and the land are losing its beloved charm, and people are very frustrated with these developers. What would you do to curb this overdevelopment that people are so concerned about?
Well, I'll say that when I was on the town council, I was proud to support nearly every open space acquisition in our town. I think that's very, very important. And when I got to the legislature, one of the things I said I was going to do that I did was I was going to seek out state funding so we could improve our open space parcels. And I was proud to work with members of the town council and the open space committee to get a grant this past spring to improve our Novex Orchard open space parcel. Development is challenging. I remember as a kid, I used to go sledding down Loper Hill. My dad would park at the bottom. So you got to walk up first. And it was always, why? He's like, well, at the end, you're not going to want to walk up to the top. Now there's rows of houses on Loper Hill. And aesthetically, it doesn't look nice. But we have to think, like the guy, Mr. Loper, right? He maybe didn't have a 401k. Maybe his retirement was his land. And he sold his land so he could retire or pass on an inheritance. And so it's not as simple as saying he can't do that. People own property and there's zoning regulations. And so we have to work, our local zoning board has to work to make sure we maintain the integrity of our town, make it not overly developed. Maybe we should look at what organizations like, or businesses like Kinsman Brewing has done, where they took an old factory and they restored it into a business. Maybe we should look at some of our older buildings in town and we should turn that into places that we could develop for people to live and work. I'd really like to see, I'm looking forward to seeing the Ideal Foraging lot being developed into a place that offers offers us a nice form of development for our community.
Mr. Morelli, same question for you.
Can you read it again, please?
Yes, absolutely. I believe the majority of Southington's residents are very concerned about the overdevelopment in our town and the destruction of the habitat for wildlife. The small town feel and the land are losing its beloved charm, and people are very frustrated with these developers. What will you do to curb this overdevelopment that people are so concerned about?
I've been involved in Southington politics since 2014, and every election this comes up as an issue. The people in Southington do not like the development levels that are happening here. And every time at the polls somebody says to me that we're developer friendly and that we are allowing overdevelopment, I tell them that we need to purchase the land. Ms. Clark, who's here, will tell you that we tried twice to raise the minimum requirements for open space, and every time we did, nobody that complained about the open space development came, but every landowner came and said we're taking away their land. So the answer is not to change the laws or the zoning. The answer, once again, is to buy it. I remember very vividly the Loper Hill project, where citizens came in and accused me personally of being on the take by developers. And I can tell you that that land was sold for about $7 or $8 million. And we don't have that kind of money in our local open space preservation funds. So unless the state wants to start lending money when we ask for it, we won't be able to make these purchases. The only way we can do it is to go to referendum. And by the way, by the time we go to referendum and we ask for it, we'll get the developer will spend $1 more and we'll lose it. So I would like to say that I'm very proud of the acquisition of the building rights of the Southington Country Club. I think that was one of the best things that ever happened to Southington as far as preservation goes.
Next question, we'll start with you, Mr. Morelli. School safety should be a priority for all of us. There has been a lot of talk about mental health services in the schools as well as to security officers. How will school safety be a priority for you if you are elected?
Well, you hit two subjects there. I think school safety is of the utmost importance, obviously. There's been a lot of discussion about whether we want armed guards or not armed guards, whether we have metal detectors or not have detectors. I think what we find is that mental health issues are the primary cause of violence in the schools. And I don't think that we as a state do enough to help those with these issues. So I would be an advocate for an expanded level of mental health for children and adults.
Mr. Poulos, same question. School safety should be a priority for all of us. There has been a lot of talk about mental health services in the schools as well as to security officers. How will school safety be a priority for you if you are elected?
Look, I'm a teacher, right? And I want my school to be safe, not just for me, but more so for my students. I was in Sandy Hook the day of that horrible incident. I was in my school the Monday after that when we were locked down, not a drill, locked down because they thought there was a threat. Mental health is definitely an issue, and I'm proud to have allocated millions of dollars to mental health just this past May to try to address these issues. I see it firsthand. We went from 7 kids in our school having anxiety before COVID to 77, okay? That's a huge increase. We need to do something, we need to invest in that. We can't just say tough it out. They need help. In terms of SROs, I'm a big fan of SROs. We have one in our school. Officer Valentine is at the high school as well, my school where I teach, and Officer Valentine at the high school. And they're not necessarily policing, but they're getting kids on the wrong path, they're befriending them, they're guiding them, and they're actually giving them a shot in life because of their presence. And so I have supported SROs. They tried to get rid of them during the 2023 legislative session. I fought back, and I will always support an SRO.
Mr. Poulos, due to low wages, there is a shortage of care workers, including in nursing homes, long-term care facilities, child care, and those supporting clients with disabilities. How do you plan to address the growing workforce crisis in the state, especially as its population continues to age?
Sure. I mean, the public sector and healthcare workers, most people would say that it's hard to attract them into their professions because of their salaries and their pay. I think we have to be creative, and we have to offer benefits to our nurses or our nursing home employees. We just passed great nursing home legislation, which improved the quality of work life for the employees of nursing homes, and it also put in certain rules to make sure the quality of resident life in our nursing homes is high quality. That was a first step. We could look at some of these positions, we could look at the benefits that they receive. There might be a better return on investment on offering better health care for these residents if we're unable to raise their salaries. For the early childhood, I mentioned earlier, we made sure that in our legislation we passed this past session that there was $1,800 stipends for the workers of those organizations. And so, again, it's complicated. We have to think out of the box. We can't just say pay them more. I mean, there's just not enough money in the pocketbook, especially if we're adhering to the fiscal guardrails. We have to be creative, and we have to work together to find a way.
Mr. Morelli, same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I find that to be also a very difficult question, and I really am disappointed that there's no money in the pocketbook. You know, we're talking about people that respond to your house when you're having a heart attack. So paramedics in the state of Connecticut and EMTs in the state of Connecticut don't make a reasonable wage. They can't live on the wage they make. These people are responsible for your lives. There's got to be a way to make their wage more competitive. And again, an $1,800 stipend is not going to help them pay their mortgage, pay for groceries. They need to make an hourly rate that's commensurate with what they do. And the same thing for people in nursing homes and those with the ones that take care of those with disabilities. There's got to be some way to level those wages. And if we say that the fiscal curbs are not going to allow that, then again, I think that's wrong. The state needs to offer higher levels of reimbursement to these not-for-profits that provide these services, because they're the majority of the ones that provide the services for people with disabilities. And so again, not having an equal playing field on that reimbursement is not good.
Okay, our final question of the night. Mr. Morelli, what measures would you take to foster unity in a politically divided environment?
Oh man. That's not an easy question to answer. Again, I always try to treat others like I treat myself, and I like to work with everybody and anybody. I don't think that it's party specific. However, I have the experience of being in politics locally for about 12 years now, and this is a very difficult thing. It seems to me that the opposite party tries to make the opposite party look bad, and so that doesn't foster unity. So I don't know how we get around that, but that's my answer, sorry.
Mr. Poulos, same question. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
What measures would you take to foster unity in a politically divided environment?
I think the first thing that both sides have to do is give up on the divisive rhetoric. There's so much divisive rhetoric out there that just makes people angry, and it makes people divided. I think that a first step would be finding common ground and trying to, as a legislator, I would try to find common ground with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle and try to pass moderate, bipartisan legislation that people can, from both sides, can feel proud of. That's what I've done. That's what I will continue to do. And I think that if you walk that talk, you take your first step towards addressing the division that we see in our country, our state, and our hometown. And it's not something that can happen overnight. We've gotten into this position over time, and it's going to take some time to get out of it. But I do think it's possible, and I do believe that people can work together and be civil and productive once again.
We will now move to closing remarks. Mr. Poulos, you have 4 minutes for closing remarks.
Thank you. On the night I was elected and I won my election, I called my dad up. I said, "Dad, I won. It was close." And he didn't say anything. Just a little pause on the phone. And I said, "Are you proud of me, Dad?" He said, "Chris, you got to earn it." I've spent 2 years earning it for this town. I have worked hard to represent the people of this town. I go to Hartford, I work hard at the Capitol, I read the bills, if I don't understand something, I ask someone for help to understand it, and I make sure before I vote that I know what I'm voting for. And sometimes I vote against my party because it's what's best for Southington, because that's earning it. I work hard in my district. I love this town. I grew up in this town. And I have spent time, thousands of doors. Last summer, 1,100 doors, just because I wanted to hear what people had to say. I wasn't running for anything. This January, 500 doors in the snow, because I wanted to know what they wanted me to do in the legislative session this past spring. I have held legislative Q&As across this district regularly, and so people can come to me. I have visited our businesses. I have been actively attending Chamber of Commerce business events so I can understand the needs of our businesses. And, I've also celebrated with our residents. I've also gone out to the Eagle Scout celebrations, the 50th anniversary celebrations, because I believe that our people, our residents want to see something positive coming out of government. People are done with the doom, gloom, and no votes. People want to feel good about government, and my whole approach has been to be an independent thinker throughout this. And that means voting issue by issue, being as moderate as I possibly can, and just trying to deliver for the people of Southington. And the Independent Party of Connecticut has seen that in me, and they've endorsed me because of that. I have 2 asks for the people here tonight and the people viewing at home. My first ask is, be vigilant. Be vigilant. Be careful when you see the misleading social media posts full of half-truths. Be careful when you see the large signs on our Southington roads that paint broad opinions about the different political parties. You know what's interesting? Some signs say that certain parties or certain candidates like criminals, that they like criminals, they want to support them. Again, I put my record of criminal justice up against anyone's. My record of support for the police up against anyone's. I see signs out there that say certain people support undocumented illegal aliens. You know what? 80% of the Republicans in the legislature voted to extend health care for undocumented children. 80% of Republicans, okay? So be careful, be vigilant when you see those signs. And I'll just say this. My campaign is not a campaign against Donald Trump. My campaign is not a campaign in support of Kamala Harris. My campaign is about this town. It's about Southington. It's about doing what's best and what's right for our great town. Thank you.
Good job, Chris.
Mr. Morelli, you have 4 minutes for closing remarks.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I have to say that it's going to be hard for me to talk 4 minutes about myself because I don't like to talk about myself. But I will say this. I'm running for this position because I believe truly in my heart that we need a change in Hartford. The Democrats are ruining this country. They're ruining this state, and they're hurting our town. You say what you want, but Democrats are in control, and these things that they've done are affecting each and every one of us. The guardrails, we talk about guardrails. They think that's a great thing. I see that as a very dangerous and hurtful thing. It's really causing a lot of problems for people that are in need and they require services. Taxes, they say they gave you a tax break. They gave you a $20 tax break last year, and then they increased spending like crazy. Utility rates go without saying. There's no reason why a single company should be allowed to extort us for increases like they do, and there's no reason why we should have to pay for other people's bills. So that's just plain wrong. I am also a member of the chamber, and I have been to many chamber meetings, and I am well aware of the issues that are affecting local businesses. And having said that, I again feel like I would be part of a very strong supportive team that would bring respect back to our town and reasonable spending. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We we have some time left. I wonder if you might want to take one question from one side and one question from the other. We have time for 2 more questions. Start over here. You want to have a question for the candidate? Okay.
Yeah.
None? How about over here?
Mr. Poulos, Representative Poulos, there was a very important education meeting up at the state capitol, which you are on the committee of. Many residents in town have reached out to you. However, the response came after the public hearing, and I was disappointed that you weren't at the public hearing to address residents of Southington and across the state about issues that were presented in education. Are you able to serve at the Capitol and not just in Southington when you're a teacher effectively?
Absolutely. I have a great mechanism of support in my school. I have the release time that I need to be at the Capitol. I am very present at the Capitol. We do operate under rules in the legislature, and some of those rules allow for Zoom participation in meetings. Some people have 2 competing committee meetings at the same time, and they have to Zoom for one and be in person at the other. On that particular day, I was at school. But I was able to avoid the commute and get on Zoom and listen to that public hearing. I listened clearly. I replied to everyone who emailed me about that public hearing. I voted very strongly on the bill you're talking about, against my party on that bill. I'm proud of that vote, and I explained that vote to everyone that I made. So there's no issues with me serving in Hartford at all. And so I appreciate that question. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming, everyone. Thank you for this will be up on Southington TV. It'll be archived, so it can be referenced again if anyone would like to watch it.
Thank you. You too.